addition to this, there are price setting laws that also have an effect on the people. So when the government set prices below the level set by supply and demand, like the amount demanded by the consumers increases, but the amount produced decreases, and this causes a shortage. And this can go to food, gasoline, and a number of other things. And the reason for this is because when the price is low, obviously the consumer will be like, I want it all. I mean, if it's a low price, but the people that produce it are the ones losing money because it's set at a lower price than what it's actually worth. So because they don't want to keep losing money, they reduce the production, and that's why shortages occur. In Zimbabwe in 2007, something like this was applied, which was that because in order to fight inflation, they lowered the prices, but this only caused a food crisis, and it was so bad that the red meat was so expensive that the middle class wasn't able to even buy it in the black market. And this was something that was politically effective because obviously people were like, okay, finally we're able to buy at a lower price. But in the long run, it was disastrous for the society. Okay, so just like laws that set prices low create shortages, laws that set prices up create surpluses. And agriculture is an example of this. Well, there was in USA, and there was also in France. This one is not in the book though, but I remember it not long ago. The French government had to buy like huge amounts of wine because the surplus was insane. Because what this creates are unsaleable surpluses, and that lead to expensive government programs to buy these surpluses. And how they buy it is with the taxpayers' money. So it really affects everyone. Now we're also gonna talk about the minimum wage. This one is probably one of my favorite topics because Thomas Sowell really opened my eyes in this topic. I used to think that having a minimum wage would benefit people. I mean, I was never like a activist of the minimum wage, but it is still good to have this information, whether you go out in the street or not, because you are able to see how I don't know how to say, like how much the government is able to acknowledge information. Because the minimum wage is a good amount of time it's used by politicians to gain votes, and it's also a big topic for the social justice advocates to give to the poor, no, or to raise their income, which sounds good. Sounds like it would make sense, like, oh well, now they have more money, but it has effects in different ways. And so what happens when you increase the minimum wage is that you are increasing the salary of an unskilled beginner to more of what it's actually worth in the market. And when you do this, then people are gonna be less likely to hire more people because you are paying above the real price. and which is you, the individual, the entrepreneur, the employer, that it's actually using your own money to pay. Whereas before you would have maybe hire 5 people, now maybe you will hire 2 or 3. And this creates a higher percentage of unemployment in unskilled beginners. Actually, the ones that get affected the most, particularly in the United States, for example, are the teenagers. So now we're gonna go with some numbers to showcase how is that having a minimum wage doesn't necessarily help. So back in 1948, in the group age of 16 and 17 years old, Black had 9.4% of unemployment and white had 10.2%. And for the ages of 18 and 19 years old, Black had a 10.5% and white a 9.4%. There was racism back then. No one discusses that. But the minimum wage was actually well below of what the actual job was worth. So it was an ineffective minimum wage, which also which made it easier for these teenagers to get a job. Among them was Thomas Sowell. In 1950, there were increases in order to keep up with the inflation, and the unemployment rate among Black teenagers never fell below 20%, and in some of those years it ranged above 40%. So it was substantially higher, the unemployment rate among Black teenager males versus white teenage males. The difference exceeded 2 to 1. And you would say, like, but why, when there was actually more racism back then than it is now? So what happens when you have a higher minimum wage is that you have more applicants coming to you for a job. But you as an employer, because you have to spend more on unskilled people, you will not hire that many, but you have a bigger pool. So then you can choose to wait for more to apply, or cherry pick who you want to work with. Whereas when you have a lower minimum wage, you what you have less applicants, so you are forced to pick for whatever the pool has, and also maybe you will also hire more people, and this can cause more unemployment again, because you are hiring less, but also you can even choose which races you want to hire, and you can have that luxury because your pool is higher. I hope I'm explaining it as it is. If not, read the book. So now let's gonna see the unemployment rate around the world when there is no minimum wage. In 2003, Switzerland had a 3.9%. In 2013, Singapore 2.1%. In 1991, Hong Kong had a 2%. In the 1920s, with the President Coolidge administration, the unemployment rate went from a high of 4.2% to 1.8%. All of this is without minimum wage. So what we conclude is that to deliberately advocate for minimum wage because you think you are helping the low-income people, you are actually making low-income people like you're excluding them from the labor market by doing so. And I mean, this is important to acknowledge because you are harming the people you want to help. At one time, groups were actually targeted for exclusion of the labor market. Among them were Japanese immigrants in Canada and African workers in South Africa, when there was also the apartheid. Racism is an attitude inside people's head and may cost the racist nothing. However, discrimination is an overt act, and this in the real world can cost the discriminator little or much, depending on the circumstances. So, for example, minimum wage reduce the cost of discrimination because of what I just mentioned before, that when you have a bigger pool of applicants and if you're a racist, then because you will receive more applications or whatever, and then you will be like, okay, let me just wait until whites apply and then I will hire whites. Whereas when there is no minimum wage, because the pool is so low, you are like, you have to keep the business going, so you have to hire as soon as possible. So you hire whatever comes, it might not sound that pretty, but it's what it is.